My name is Helen Parker. I'm 59 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet neighbourhood in Washington. I've worked as an office manager at an accounting firm for almost 2 decades. I raised 2 children, Sarah, my daughter, who just turned 32, and Jason, my 29-year-old son, and spent most of my adult life making sure they never had to endure the struggles I faced. Last Tuesday, I received an email that changed everything. It was from Sra, no subject line, just her name sitting in my inbox. I smiled before opening it, thinking maybe it was a quick update or a sweet note before her big day. We had just talked about her wedding plans. A few weeks ago, I had already contributed $30,000 to help her book the venue, hire a photographer, and reserve the florist she had adored since college. But when I opened the email, the smile disappeared. "Mom," the email began. No dear Mom, just Mom like a label. Sarah explained that she, along with her fiancé, Michael, and his family, had finalised the guest list for the ceremony in Sonoma Valley, and after much thought, they decided it was best if I watched the wedding via live stream, not in person. She added that Michael's mother was particular about the guest count and wanted to keep things intimate. At the end, she included a line that felt like salt poured into an open wound. If you want to be part of it, you can watch through the Zoom link we've created. Should be just like being there. LOL. I stared at the screen for a long time. My coffee grew cold. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't cry. Something inside me quietly shifted, like the ground had cracked open beneath me, but I was still standing. I replied with just 4 words. "Sure, enjoy your big day." No emotion, no argument, just a quiet withdrawal. And I knew deep down those 4 words would echo louder than any scream. I didn't want to fight, I didn't want tears. I wanted clarity. I wanted the silence to speak for itself. I closed the laptop, finished my now cold coffee, and got ready for work like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. That was the day I stopped pretending my sacrifices meant anything to my daughter. That was the day everything began to change. The drive to the office that morning was quiet. Washington's early spring air still held a chill, but I barely noticed. My mind kept circling the same question. How did we get here? I've spent 18 years working at Mitchell & Grant Accounting. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and stability was what I needed after my husband died suddenly when the kids were still teenagers. I remember standing in front of our old washing machine, bills spread across the counter, trying to figure out how to pay for both groceries and Sra's upcoming college deposit. Back then, I didn't think twice about giving up my weekends. I took extra shifts, cancelled vacations, skipped birthdays. I told myself, there'd be time for me later. There never was. Every penny I saved went to Sarah and Jason. When Sarah changed majors twice and needed more credits, I paid. When she moved across the country for a short-lived job in Boston, I covered her deposit and plane ticket. When she cried through her second breakup at 27, I flew out, held her hand, and made her tea in a kitchen that didn't feel like home. When Jason wanted to buy a house with his fiancée, I co-signed the mortgage and wrote the first $10,000 check without hesitation. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? But that email made me feel like a transaction, like I had been useful and now I wasn't. Like I had a shelf life and it had expired. Back at the office, my boss, Daniel, stopped by my desk. He's one of those rare men who remembers birthdays and how you take your coffee. He noticed something was off right away. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting a latte from the cafe downstairs on my desk. I wanted to tell him, I wanted to say, my daughter just disinvited me from her wedding, but instead I smiled and said I hadn't slept well. He didn't push. That small act of kindness, the coffee, the silence, nearly undid me. After all the noise in my head that morning, it reminded me that I still existed, that I still mattered, even if only quietly. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Sarah again. Her name lit up my screen like a spotlight. I didn't want voicemails. Texts. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen to any of them, not yet. I just sat there sipping my latte and thought, maybe it's time to stop being the one who always answers. Maybe it's time to stop playing a role in someone else's story when they won't let you on the stage. That afternoon, I made a decision that would shift the ground beneath all of us. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more powerful. I was going to act. After work, I didn't go straight home. I drove to First State Bank, a few blocks from the office. Carlos, the branch manager, had helped me with everything from setting up college funds to adjusting retirement contributions. He always greeted me by name, Mrs. Parker. He smiled, standing to shake my hand. "What can I do for you today?" I sat down across from him and placed my purse on the floor. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "I need to cancel a wire transfer," I said. He blinked. "The one to the Sonoma venue?" "Yes, that one." Carlos hesitated. "There may be a cancellation fee depending on timing, but may I ask why? Have circumstances changed?" I replied without elaborating. He looked something up on his screen. "You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet, just in time." He paused, then looked up at me. "Are you sure, Mrs. Parker? $50,000 is a significant amount." I nodded. "I'm sure." 50,000, that was the amount I had planned to send, on top of the $30,000 already gone. 80,000 total for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. I signed the necessary forms and left the bank without a second thought. By the time I got home, there were 9 missed calls from Sra, 2 from Jason, and 1 voicemail that simply said, "Mum, please don't do this." I turned off my phone in the kitchen. I reached for the bottle of red wine I'd been saving for Thanksgiving. I hadn't opened it back then. Sarah was supposed to visit, but she cancelled last minute because of work, she said. I poured a glass, took it out to the porch and sat in the fading sunlight. Birds chirped in the trees. A neighbour's dog barked. Everything felt still. Then the memories started coming in waves, all the birthdays I planned alone, all the holiday dinners where I pretended I wasn't waiting for a call that never came, all the small sacrifices that nobody noticed, the new shoes I didn't buy, the car I drove for 14 years, the vacations I postponed. I thought about Michael's mother, the woman who barely knew Sarah, yet whose opinion carried more weight than mine. The woman whose idea of family meant excluding the one person who had carried Sarah through every hard season of her life. I thought about the way Sarah signed off her email with LOL, as if watching your own daughter's wedding through a screen was a joke. And finally I thought about myself, not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman. What did I want? Peace, dignity, a life that didn't revolve around being useful to people who only showed up when they needed something. That night, around 9 p.m, the doorbell rang. I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Jason, still in his office clothes, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked uncomfortable, holding his phone in one hand like a shield. "Mom," he said, stepping inside before I could speak, "why aren't you answering your phone? Sarah's freaking out." I shut the door calmly. "Hello to you too." He sighed, already pacing. "She says you're not coming to the wedding now that you're being difficult." I laughed bitterly at being called difficult for not attending a wedding I wasn't invited to. He shifted uneasily. "Michael's parents are covering most of the costs, Mum. You know how traditional they are." I raised an eyebrow. "Traditional?" "I'd already paid 30,000. I was about to give another 50,000. That's not tradition, that's a buyout." He froze. "Wait, you were sending another 50? I took a slow sip of my wine. "Not anymore." Jason's face went pale. "Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the food." "Not my problem anymore," I said evenly. His voice grew louder. "Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter." "And I'm her mother," I said softly. "A mother who was told to stay home and watch through a screen." He ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. "You always make everything about yourself." That was it. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. "Get out of my house." "What? Did you say that?" "Jason, get out." "Mum, no." My voice was firm yet gentle. "I've given everything I had. I'm done being the villain in a story I wrote with love. Jason stood frozen for a moment, then turned and quietly closed the door behind him. The click sounded louder than any slam. I stood alone in the middle of my living room, heart pounding, and realised something startling. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls and a string of frantic messages from Sarah. They started passive-aggressive. "Mum, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish." Then the tone shifted. "The venue just called. The payment didn't go through. We're going to lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. Michael's parents are furious. They say this proves they were right about you." At 3:24 a.m, she sent, "I don't understand why you're doing this to me." I smiled into my coffee. Of course she didn't understand. Sarah had grown up with my sacrifices so tightly woven into her life that she never paused to question where the comfort came from, the security, the stability. She just assumed it would always be there, that I would always be there. But not this time. Later that morning, while reviewing contracts at my desk, an email popped up in my personal inbox. The subject line read, "Please don't ruin my wedding, period." I opened it with no expectations. "Mum," she wrote, "I know you're upset about the live stream situation, but this is extreme. We lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the remaining balance by the end of the day, Paris time, the caterer will pull out. Michael's parents are beyond upset. They say this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the funds first." There it was. They were willing to discuss letting me attend. Now that the money was gone, not an apology, not reflection, a negotiation, as if my presence at my own daughter's wedding could be bargained, bought or sold, depending on how generous I felt. I didn't respond. I closed the email and returned to my work. Around noon, Daniel stopped by my desk at lunch. He offered to try that new Italian place that had just opened. I almost declined, as I usually did, but something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the clarity of the past 24 hours. Maybe I just needed to sit somewhere that asked nothing from me. So I nodded. "I'd like that. Pasta sounds perfect." He talked about his grandkids and how exhausting but beautiful it was to chase after them. His eyes were soft and genuine. He paused, then said gently, "Forgive me, Helen, but you seem lighter today." I surprised myself. I told him everything about Sarah, the email, the wedding, the money, and what I did. When I finished, he didn't judge. He didn't try to fix anything. He just said, "Sometimes the hardest part of love is setting boundaries, especially with the people we've given the most to." He reached across the table and briefly squeezed my hand. "I think you did the right thing for the first time in a long time." "I believe that too," I replied. When I returned to my desk, the calls and messages kept coming, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time, my silence spoke volumes. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, the sky was already fading into dusk. The porch light clicked on automatically, casting a warm glow. Everything seemed calm, peaceful even, until I noticed someone sitting on my front steps. As I got closer, I recognized her, Claire. She stood quickly and brushed imaginary dust from her coat. Claire had been Sarah's best friend since middle school. She'd spent countless weekends at our house, baking cookies, watching movies, and giggling in sleeping bags until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Harris," she said quietly, "I'm sorry to just show up like this." "It's fine," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, her eyes drifting around the familiar walls as if searching for echoes from the past. I filled the kettle and waited. "Did Sarah send you?" I finally asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "She's a mess. They lost the venue, the florist pulled out. Michael's parents are threatening to call off the wedding." I said nothing, placing 2 mugs on the counter. "She's panicking," Claire continued. "She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it." "Is that why you're here?" I asked. "To fix it?" She shook her head. "No, I'm here to ask, is there anything she can say or do to change your mind?" I paused. Would an apology change the way it felt to be excluded, to be treated like a bank account, to be told you're not welcome unless your money is involved? I looked at Claire. Still young, still hopeful. No, I said quietly, there isn't. Her shoulders sagged. Not even if she apologised? I handed her a mug of tea. Words are easy, Claire, especially when people are desperate, but the people who truly love you don't wait until you shut them out to see you. Claire looked down into her tea, nodding slowly. I get it, she said, even if she doesn't. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harris, she said softly. You don't need to be, I replied. We stood quietly for a moment, two women from different generations, connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be truly seen is to walk away. Claire didn't stay long. She didn't argue. She simply thanked me, hugged me gently, and walked back into the night. I closed the door behind her, finally shutting out a version of myself I had long outgrown. The wedding never happened, at least not as they planned. They scrambled to find another venue, but everything was either booked or way too expensive without the money I had once promised. According to Jason, they ended up having a small backyard ceremony a few weeks later. Just close family and Michael's parents. I wasn't invited, and this time I didn't need to be. In the weeks that followed, Sarah sent one last email. Long, emotional, half apology, half justification. I read it once, then archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace that comes with letting go, not in anger, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up without wondering who needed something from me, without bracing for another guilt trip disguised as love. I made a new rule for myself. If my presence is negotiable, then so is my effort. I go to work. I read novels. I joined a pottery class. I have dinner with friends who see me, not just what I can give. And I've learnt something I wish I'd known sooner. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm. If this story resonated with you, share it, comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one you finally give to yourself.